When I say inflammation, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Swelling, like from an injury or an insect bite? Or maybe an infected cut? But what about bone loss? Heart disease? Do you think of hormonal imbalance? You'd be surprised at how many health problems are a direct result of inflammation. And we're going to talk about that and more today at Sunflower Shop. Did you know that controlling inflammation is one of the best things you can do for healthy bones? Here to help us learn more is Herb Lewis, Vice President of New Chapter. He has over 30 years experience in the health and wellness industry, and we're pleased to have him with us today. Herb, bone loss. Let me ask you this, how is inflammation a key cause of bone loss?
So few people realize that bone loss, osteoporosis, is an inflammatory disease, much like cardiovascular disease, cancer, Alzheimer's. Bone loss itself is a natural process of aging when inflammation rises. For example, estrogen, which is itself an anti-inflammatory hormone, begins to drop off in women. So inflammation in the bone tissue arises, and it causes bone to give up calcium to the bloodstream. In fact, there's a peptide that turns certain genes on, inflammatory genes called rankle. And in fact, if you modulate the rankle, you can slow down postmenopausal bone loss by controlling and modulating inflammation.
You know, I've seen lots and lots of research coming out on vitamin K2, the K2 version. Can you elaborate a little bit more on K2?
A lot of people understand that minerals and D are really important for bone health, and they are. But the missing link and the most important component, must be stressed, is K2. And you might be familiar with K1, which is a big part of dark green leafy vegetables that is responsible for a little bit of coagulation of the blood in case you get a cut. You certainly don't need to supplement more K1. Most people's blood is too thick, not thin enough. But K2 has none of that effect. It has a totally different effect in the body, and it is the traffic cop. In fact, the research on K2 is so clear. A Rotterdam study, which was a 10-year study done on 4,800 women over a 10-year period of time, demonstrated that women that got less than 32 micrograms of K2 in their diet had a 50% increase in dying from cardiovascular disease. So that need for K2 is life or death, cardiovascular disease being the #1 killer. So if one can get 50 micrograms or more of K2 in the diet, which is difficult, by the way, it's very, very, very rare. It almost always needs to be supplemented. But 50 micrograms of K2 work like a traffic cop in the body. They signal our calcium and our minerals to go to the hard tissue to build bone and keep it out of the soft tissue, which can cause calcification of aorta, hardening of the heart, certainly hardening of the arteries, which is a key cause of cardiovascular disease and death. So K2 is life and death. It directs those minerals, especially calcium, into the bones, out of the soft tissue, reducing the risk of spurs, stones, and plaque.
New Chapter has a calcium called Bone Strength Take Care. Can you elaborate a little bit more about why this is one of our best sellers in calcium?
Well, we've touched on 2 points of its function. Research has shown that it's a very good anti-inflammatory, reducing this rankle gene that causes inflammation of the bone and therefore bone loss. So the source of all the minerals, and it's the highest food source of calcium you can get. Twice as much calcium in our red algae, which is our mineral source, than in almonds. Twice as much. So we add red algae, sea vegetables. Most calcium supplements, conventional calcium supplements, are made from calcium carbonate, rock. Very, very plentiful in calcium and very, very inexpensive, but very difficult for us to utilize. And I'm sure you at Sunflower appreciates the fact that people can't eat rocks and dirt. If they could, they'd be digging in their driveway, not shopping in your store. But we need food. So Bone Strength Take Care supplies the richest source of calcium and all 72 trace minerals, including boron and zinc and copper and other tiny trace components part of bone and joint health, by the way, in a natural sense. It's red algae from the deep, pristine seas off of Iceland. Secondly, 50 micrograms of K2. Obviously, we picked the right level of the active K2 based on the Rotterdam study and other studies that show that it builds bones and stops blockage of the arteries. And number 3 is D3. And D, everybody knows, is essential to calcium health. And the reason that it is it stimulates double the uptake of calcium from the gut. Calcium, even in food, can be difficult to absorb as other minerals are. D3 helps that. So D3 is very important. Bone Strength Take Care works. It's research. It contains red algae, rich source of all the minerals. It contains the right levels of K2 and a very active 1,000 units of D3.
So by really controlling inflammation, it can benefit us all, both in bone loss and other health issues.
A wide range of health issues. We termed a phrase at New Chapter called inflammaging. As we age, not only do we oxidize faster, we have massive amounts of inflammation, which leads to breakdown of everything from skin and bones to brain and heart.
Herb, that's some great information. I really appreciate you coming out today and talking with us.
Thank you very much.
If you're concerned about bone loss, fighting inflammation is a great place to start. So come see us at Sunflower Shop, where great health is just a way of life.